right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another session of our small group demo series. Hope everyone's having a good week so far. Today's topic, Teams and Taxonomy. We're really excited about these two distinct features. As content repositories grow larger and more complex, content management can become a little difficult without the right organizational structures in place. So to help tackle these challenges, we've introduced these two powerful capabilities, Teams and Taxonomy. And we're also excited to announce that as of last week, both these features are generally available to all our customers now. So yeah, today we'll dive into this significant addition to our CMS and then really highlighting how we'll be able to help you guys and our customers to scale content organization, team management as well. So let's dive in. But before we get started, my name is Austin Chen. I'm here on the product marketing team over at Contentstack. I'm joined by John Kelly as well as Bethany Wiles. You guys want to say hi?
Hello.
Hello.
Sweet. All right, well then let's get started. So a quick agenda before we dive in. We'll go over what Teams is, as well as taxonomy, kind of give you guys a behind-the-scenes look via our live demo that Bethany will be walking us through later. And then we'll be sure to leave some time at the end for Q&A as well. All right, but to kind of set the stage first, wanted to kind of talk about some of the challenges, right, with maintaining and managing content at scale. So kind of three buckets that we like to think about here. First one, really just around that flat document structure. While headless CMSs provide that flexibility, that agility, sometimes that inherent structure, like structured organization that legacy CMSs have, headless CMSs sometimes lack in that regard. So as a result, customers, using a headless CMS often face challenges in aligning the flat document structure with the hierarchical navigation of web properties that we're more used to. And then this next bucket here is around governance and collaboration challenges. So multiple teams, often work in parallel on the same application, but need to be able to have some sort of separation from other teams' work streams and projects. So without this, there's a level of confusion and interruption sometimes. So teams that sit in different parts of businesses need to be able to work in those different contexts and will require, specific access to specific content models that are most relevant to them and their projects. And then third here, the content consistency and dependability. So as customers create more content, the task of organizing and maintaining that content, becomes increasingly complex and time consuming. Something that we might know as the content sprawl. So enterprises are going to need a better way to organize that vast amount of content and data to really allow their users to navigate to the content that they need most immediately, whether that's across multiple content types or not. So this is especially true for companies that have multiple teams collaborating within the same content model as well. All right. I will now pass it over to you, John, to talk a little bit more about, what is Teams and taxonomy. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. So, just to kind of set the stage a little bit more, in serving some of the largest companies on Earth, scalability is, of course, top of mind for us. And so not only managing massive amounts of content, but also the teams who are building that content. So the first capability we'll talk about today is what's called Teams. Teams is basically a way to not only help simplify management of individual groups of users as well as roles across all of your various content projects. We call them stacks in your org, but also doing so at a large amounts of scale. And so it enables things like bulk permissions. So for very simple and easy change management for users and roles and different permissions across your various projects, but also provisioning and deprovisioning, importantly, as well as basically having just a really simple way to have an overview, sort of a bird's eye view over all the various responsibilities of individuals and groups of individuals, we would call them teams, across your entire organization and all the projects managed therein. So some of the benefits here with Teams specifically, number one, like I said, is just keeping track of all the various activities with that team itself. So we have launched a new sort of audit log within the org management or org admin dashboard itself, as well as kind of like I hinted at, sort of streamlining that management of those individuals across those teams via bulk provisioning, as well as via management of those groups sort of through your various IDPs. Notably, this is actually available via our Scheme API. So Scheme is basically a specification for user management, user provisioning, and we have some integrations today, with, such as I think OneLogin and a couple others with some of the common IDPs. But of course, you're able to use our Scheme API to actually define these groups of individuals and put them into a team. Notably, Teams for us is also going to be a sort of an entity and a definition that'll be continue to scale across the various features inside of Contentstack, but we'll get to that here in actually a few minutes. So the second feature we'll introduce today is what's called taxonomies. So we're really excited about taxonomies. As Austin said, it's generally available as of actually late last week. So for all orgs and all customers, you should be seeing it in your accounts now. This is really intended to help teams handle huge amounts of data across your entire content project and sort of assign it to various directories or hierarchies or relationships that it needs to be assigned to. So as Austin said, headless CMSs, NoSQL databases are essentially just collections of millions of teeny tiny little documents, and generally in like a flat document structure. But of course, applications and websites are not organized that way. They have some hierarchy to them. And so this is a way to sort of apply these nested structures to sort of assign hierarchies to your content as well as to your assets. And increasingly, there will be additional definitions applied to these going forward. But for example, having a nested taxonomy provides for that hierarchical structure that a lot of customers are looking for to basically mimic or mirror the information architecture or the sitemap of their application, as well as just the ability to create defined lists, almost like glossaries or dictionaries of terms that can be referenced within a content type or within an entry, so that basically you're ensuring consistency and reliability and dependability over the data that's actually being applied to your content. And of course, you can use these in sort of a meta way as well. So over time, these will be able to be applied to things like URL definitions. And so we have a URLs field with a sort of lightweight syntax for automatically defining those URLs. You will over time be able to actually apply a taxonomy to the URL field directly. So for example, if there is a specific entry that is being created in a specific place within your repository or within your sort of directory structure of your app, that URL will be able to automatically be generated based on its location using or referencing the nested relationship within that taxonomy. So knowing exactly where in that directory that entry should live, and therefore generating that URL automatically. As I said, it will be usable over time within most of the modules within the CMS. And so for us, taxonomies is kind of like a tentpole feature in the sense that it will sort of, be right in the middle of that tent, and a lot of other features, a lot of other capabilities will be brought underneath that tent. And so taxonomies will be sort of that central organizing principle around which a lot of other sort of secondary and tertiary and sort of ancillary capabilities and modules in the CMS will be able to reference. And so it just kind of brings everything together from a more centralized canonical point of view. But of course, we do have an API for this. And so you do full control over taxonomies programmatically. You can create, read, update, delete them via our management API. And I think I'll get into some benefits here in a second. And also be able to reference those via our delivery and GraphQL APIs. I should say even query by them as well. So a really notable benefit here is the ability to actually query entries according to taxonomy terms, and that is doable via our GraphQL and our content delivery API. So you don't necessarily need to know exactly which content types you're looking after or exactly to make multiple sort of requests for different content types. You're able to do queries directly by the taxonomy term itself. And again, just as far as key benefits for the feature, it does help teams to both manage and implement content management for large-scale teams, as well as sort of large-scale implementations, as well as, of course, providing that sort of quick navigation across your entries for your entire repository, according to the structures and directories you set up. And notably, coming very soon, this is kind of why, one of the key reasons why we actually chose to do this webinar as a combination and collection of these two features. Not only were they generally available around the same time, but actually there is a very key story to tell here, as they will have a very tight and interwoven relationship starting pretty soon here. There's a better together story, basically, and what we're calling this is basically taxonomy permissions. And so this actually will allow admins and developers to basically set definitions of roles using taxonomies. And so basically what that allows you to do is to stratify access to entries within the same content type according to the taxonomy category that is applied and according to basically the team that user is a member of. And so basically that solves one of the challenges today with basically a lot of teams working in parallel in a very large application or content project, but who need some kind of separation between each other's work. In today's world, you basically would have to sort of clone the content type and clone the roles, even though they look essentially identical, but they're just responsible for different parts of your application. But in this case, you have one content type to manage, and so a single structure of the data, but able to sort of stratify or segment access to the entries that are created therein according to the permissions given to that group of users. So it really simplifies not only the sort of team collaboration as well as autonomy within the content project itself, but it also helps provide a pretty significant developer benefit in building and architecting your applications. And I think we'll pass it over to Bethany to get into some demos.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Get my screen share set up and we'll get rolling. All right, perfect. So I'm Bethany. I'm a sales engineer here at Contentstack. I'll be going through teams and taxonomy in that order. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll circle back to them. And yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So before we jump into teams, I do want to refresh on our existing kind of incumbent users and roles functionality. So here we're looking at the users and roles page on my stack, and you can see my roles listed here. So I have these 3 default roles that are marked as system roles, and then we can create those custom roles where we're able to set really specific permissions for different content types, assets, publishing environments, languages, etc. So that's sort of our base level, right? That we're able to have all these different roles that are specific to each stack. So let's say in this scenario, I am an organization and I have multiple stacks, but I have one SEO team that works across all of those brands. So in the past, I would have had to, each time I wanted to onboard a new SEO manager, go through and add them individually to each of those stack roles. Now with teams, I'm able to create my team here. So in my org administration app, I can give it a name, a description, and then I can go through on each stack and add the set of roles that I want that team to have. So then when I have to add a new team member here, all I have to do is invite a user from here, and they will automatically be provisioned with all of those appropriate permissions for the different stacks. So like John was saying, this is really helpful when you have groups of people that all need the same set of permissions, especially if it's across different stacks. It could be within a single stack, but particularly helpful when there's multiple stacks involved. And it also kind of helps ensure consistency in terms of the permissions that your different users are going to have. So that is sort of our overview on teams. I don't see any questions yet. So I will go ahead and move on to taxonomy. All right, so we'll go back here to our starter application. So like John was saying, in headless systems, we typically have what we call a flat architecture for entries. So there's no inherent parent-child relationships between content. But in a lot of situations, you may want to be able to create those hierarchies and assign content to different locations in that hierarchy. So maybe that's more or less your sitemap. Maybe that's different categories and subcategories of content. In this use case, I have a travel website and I have all these different articles and I want to be able to categorize them into different regions. So I have my continents, but then I also have countries, maybe regions within that country, states, provinces, whatever the case may be. So I want to be able to assign my articles to those different geographies, essentially. So in my stack, I can go to my taxonomy setting here on the stack settings page, and very simple to build out these taxonomies. So here I've built this one out already with all of my different continents. And then if I expand them, you can see that the countries that I've added here. So if I want to go in here, add a sibling term. So in this case, that'd be like adding another continent, or add a child term, like adding another country. I can do that on each of those different levels, right? So adding more terms within that to either create those parent-child relationships or those sibling relationships. I am able to go back and edit these term names as needed if something needs to be changed. I can also reorder these into different sections of the taxonomy. Probably not super relevant here, but maybe for like a sitemap, if you're reorganizing your website, that could be useful. So really simple to get these set up. So now if I want to use them and be able to assign my content to them, all I'm going to have to do is add the taxonomy field to my content type. So you can see here, I am in the content type editor for my article. So remember, we're looking at all of these articles here that I want to assign geographies to. So here I've added my taxonomy content type, or field type rather, and then I'm able to add in the different taxonomies I want. So to back up a little bit, you can have multiple types of taxonomies. It's not just like one taxonomy to rule them all. So I've added in this geography taxonomy. If I had another one, I could change it out here or have multiple taxonomies. I can select whether I want to have a max number of terms here. So for example, I believe there's an article here on Lake Titicaca, which is on the border between two countries. So I would want to be able to add it to both of those different country geographies. So I am able to do that here as well. So now that that's been added to my content type, I can use it in my entries. So we'll open up this article here. You can see that, oh, it's actually about Amsterdam, not about Italy. I misread that Venetian. So I can go in here and change this. So I can say instead of Italy, I can swap that out to the Netherlands. But when I go to add in a assignment here, I'm going to be able to see the full taxonomy, and then I can expand the menu and see all the different terms and assign it here. So I'll go ahead and save that. So now that I have those terms assigned, I can use that in a number of ways. So here on my sidebar, I can browse my content based off of the assignments in the taxonomy. So if I want to fetch all of the pieces of content that are set in Europe, I could do that, or I could just filter it to ones in the United Kingdom, whatever it is that I need to do. You can see when I do select one of these, my advanced search is also updating. So I can also use the terms in my advanced search to build out those really specific queries to filter down my content. Of course, this is also something that you can do with the API, with the content delivery API querying, or content management API, so on and so forth. Another thing I do want to call out is, while I currently have this taxonomy only set up on my article, I can also add that same taxonomy to a different content type. So if I have landing pages that I also want to assign to a taxonomy, I can use that same taxonomy across multiple content types. All right, so that is what I have for taxonomy. Let me check. Looks like we may have some questions. Oh, good question from Fenna. Or Austin, do you want to pull up the questions? Thank you.
Yeah.
So is it possible to add synonyms to a taxonomy term? So we do have the sibling terminology. John, do you have any thoughts on synonyms to a taxonomy?
Yeah, that's a good question. One thing we're looking at in our kind of search appliance is basically, forget the exact term for it, but basically the ability to add synonyms. They would simply be stored as kind of like sibling terms, but you would create like a relationship where either it would allow for, in some cases, like a fuzzy search, or in other cases, like kind of a sibling relationship, which would be assigned as a synonym and not just as like a peer or a true sibling. And so that would allow for, kind of more integrated relationships between terms that have, semantically similar meanings, but of course aren't exactly the same word. Good question.
So Nicholas asked, does an entry with a taxonomy field return that taxonomy data in the JSON response? Yes, it does. So it would return the terms that it's been assigned to along with the UIDs of those terms. All right, Fenna asked, will taxonomy be available to use across stacks? So right now, the taxonomy feature is currently stack specific. John, is there anything on the roadmap for organizational level taxonomies?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that we're considering. At the moment, it's project based, and so basically per stack. But good question there.
All right, Ryan asked, can rules for members within Teams be set at a modular block level, as in can certain blocks or imported global fields be cordoned off for devs only, for example? So this would actually be on the custom role level rather than the Teams level. So you would set up those special permissioning types and exclusions in the custom role, and then your team would be assigned to that custom role. So yes, but sort of in an already existing way, separate from Teams. All right. Austin, is that all of our questions?
Yeah, I believe so. I think so. I think that's it. We have a couple more minutes if folks want to get some of their burning questions answered, but if not, that's all for today. Thank you all so much for taking the time to walk through Teams and Taxonomy with us. Really excited about these two new features, and yeah, we'll be sure to share the recording for those that want to revisit it as well. But yeah, this was a great session today, and really excited to see it.
Thanks, Austin, for kind of emceeing, and thanks, Bethany, for the demos. Just one quick reminder for the group. As mentioned, definitely stay tuned for additional capabilities related to taxonomies, as well as Teams coming out very shortly. We'll be additionally rolling out incremental updates and basically availability of those taxonomy objects across the entire stack. And so, as I mentioned, it's one of those tentpole features that over time will have a relationship to essentially every entity and object within Contentstack, with the ability to create permission structures via taxonomies coming out very, very soon here, targeting next month, actually. Oh, I think there was one or two extra questions.
Cool.
Is taxonomy supported by branches? So my understanding would be that when you create a new branch, your taxonomy would be cloned and you can alter it from there. So it is supported in that way, yes.
Yeah, it's a stack-based object, and so it'll be kind of carried over. And if you did need to make modifications on the branch, you'll be able to do so.
All right, and Stephen asked on another topic, there seems to be a limit on the number of branches. Can we extend this? So go ahead and reach out to your customer success manager, and they should be able to help you out with that.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.